But I don't think much is going to change. Luckily, a lot of people, especially women, are leaving. The Southern Baptists, they have the second highest CSA and SA in their convention and denominational churches, second after Catholics. A lot of women are leaving because Southern Baptists views women like they're an appliance, something to use, something to own, and something to throw away when she refuses to do the role she's forced into. And it harms men, because if you don't know what positive sexuality or not having a sexual desire, or if the sexual desire looks different than the stereotypical role that you see on a Hollywood movie, how does that affect men's psyche, their self-confidence? And in a lot of ways, it ruins people's lives, because 1 out of 4 women and 1 out of 6 men, sometimes their first sexual experience isn't consensual. Because if you believe men always want it, they can't help themselves, you're not helping any survivors with those opinions. These people are people. And a person's value, worth, and validity have nothing to do with their sexuality. And sexuality is only bad if you prey on people, adults, minors, whatever. The only bad sexuality there is people who prey on each other, or they teach bad philosophy. Because this kind of book is never about educating people so they can be autonomous with agency. It's all about getting people to fall in line to a role that always benefits men. It always benefits cis, straight, heterosexual men. Every single time. That's why marriage was created. To gain money, land, and a woman who could give children. If women couldn't give men children and they refused to work in the home, men wouldn't put up with them. Especially not in America. If women in this country demanded the respect they deserve and stopped getting married, doing free unpaid labor, and doing the majority of domestic labor and childcare, men wouldn't be able to cope. The toxic men wouldn't be able to cope. The men who think patriarchy is the best thing in the world wouldn't be able to cope. And these books uphold the patriarchy. They uphold that women are not entirely human. They're not entirely whole. And when you can't even talk about a woman without involving a man in the conversation, you have a problem. And I think on TV, if you don't have at least 3 instances of women talking without including a man in the conversation, it doesn't pass the Bechdel test. Anytime women's sexuality and women's autonomy is discussed, they're either a wife or a girlfriend. Sexuality is never discussed with women in Southern Baptist books without being the legal property of another person through marriage or it's your parents. Women's sexuality is never discussed with the same validity and importance as men's. And in turn, men will continue believing, whether or not they know better, or they do know better, but it serves them to act like they don't know better. Men will always take advantage of the theological belief that men are obsessed, they can't control themselves, and whatever happens isn't their fault. It is, but it serves them to say it doesn't. And nothing's going to change. Because it doesn't benefit men if it changes. And these books are indoctrinating people to remain in abusive relationships, toxic environments, assault, or even worse. When you believe you have to fulfill a role, whether or not it's something that's compatible with who you are, how many of these books have caused the deaths of men and women? How many women haven't reported crimes because they honestly believe all men want sex and all men can't control themselves? How many men haven't reported crimes because they live in an environment that says that men always wants it? And if a man says he doesn't want it, it doesn't exist. This is grape culture. Because everyone can live life without sex and have a happy life. You don't need sex like you do water. I've known people who lived 70 years without ever having sex, and they weren't asexual. You don't need sex to be whole. It's just another experience of being human, but not everyone needs sex to be whole or human. So anyone or any book that's religious or secular that says men need sex, they don't understand how the body and the mind works. Nobody needs sex. It's a desire, not a bodily function. You don't need it to survive. And as long as we view it as something that men start and men finish, that's not a medically accurate view of it. And our culture is so messed up. My family believes sexuality is something that just is instinct. If that were true, there would be no sex therapists. And just because you're doing something you've seen on television doesn't mean the other person's having fun. There are people that actually watch PORN and think that this is how everyone does it. That this is natural, this is how everyone participates, when it's thousands of shots edited together. How many relationships have been destroyed, damaged, or crimes committed because they have no clue what's normal based on reading traditional religious books? And it's not just a religious thing. It's a cultural thing. Men don't want women to know about themselves. They don't want women to act like men. But men better act like men. And if women start acting too much like men, it's a threat. And not much is going to change until we utterly throw away these kind of things. These publishers need to stop printing them. They need to stop glorifying them. They need to stop recommending them. Even in churches, churches need to stop recommending these things. These things create, these books, these beliefs create toxic, abusive hierarchies. Men can control themselves. Women can control themselves. And any man who thinks they can't go 31 years without sex is a danger to all women and to men, depending what their sexuality is. You don't need sex to live. You don't need sex to survive. If you want to do it, that's fine. Just make sure it's an adult and that they're more enthusiastic than you are. And the belief that men always want it is the dogma of men who coerce and manipulate women. There are groups within Christianity that believe that men can divorce women for not giving it to them. Like, men think it's an entitlement thing. You're not entitled to somebody else. They're not your property. And if you think so, you probably need to get slapped, because that's usually the only way that women can leave in a safe fashion. And in women, if you're married to someone who thinks sex is entitled, and they push your boundaries and don't respect physical boundaries, this is not a safe person to be alone with, let alone married. And people who stay in these environments, I completely understand why you do. Because the most dangerous time is when you leave. But these kind of relationships are teaching your sons how to treat women. And you don't want your sons treating women like that. And you're teaching your daughters that this is okay. Men need to stop printing books that are utterly BS. And there is no way people that are this educated don't understand how healthy sexuality works. I barely went to school and figured out that's not how sexuality works. And we just need to stop publishing and putting these books on shelves. They harm people. Usually they harm women more than men. And we just need to stop giving people access to these books. Because these books teach abuse. They erode consent. They smash boundaries. Nobody is entitled to anything but their own bodies and their own safety. And if you think you're entitled, stay as far away from children and women as possible, because you aren't a danger. If you can't understand and respect no, and you think coercion and manipulation, which is illegal in certain places, is something that's okay, you are a terrible human being. You might be a criminal. But it is criminal to teach people that men can't help assaulting people. That's not okay. And it's not a surprise they support Trump. They support people who support predators. Because these types of groups don't care about what's good for women. They care about what is good for the men. And if a woman gets hurt, well, it's just collateral damage, even though it should never happen. These books don't teach accountability. They don't teach consent. They don't teach self-control. They teach that 49% of the population just can't help being a jerk, which is so untrue. And it sets up gender roles, which are toxic, abusive, and does nobody any favors, especially innocent children, especially girls.